Welcome back, Pokemon trainers, to the 2018 Regional Championships here in Stuttgart. We are here for round 5, and I'm joined by Marcus Staton once again. How are you feeling after watching that previous game?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Can you remind me, what was the last round again? Was Jens playing, right?
Yes, Jens and the Nidoking.
Yeah, the Nidoking. So many switches, so much positioning going on in that set. That was
And rock slides.
rock slides, of course. Unfortunately for Jens there. But I was talking to him like very briefly after the round, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like the same thing happened in Oceania as well.
Oh no.
He was on stream for the 4th round, and then he lost there. So went from 3-0 to 3-1. So yeah, I told him to like just do what he did there and
exactly.
like win
Keep winning
his
from
remaining
there.
games. Exactly. But for the next round, we have yet another matchup of players who are undefeated so far. It's going to be Michele Gavelli from Italy against Joan Perello from Spain. And yeah, we're seeing, or we're going to see two more teams that are a little bit like more standardish on screen right now. You can see Michele's team, whose face we cannot see though.
He's a little substitute today, repping that form.
Exactly, and so his team consists of yeah, we could see it very briefly. I think it's going to be the first Mega Gardevoir team that we're featuring on stream.
Yeah, and that was a Pokemon that was really, really popular in the most recent regional championships over in America. I believe it even took the title in the end, and
Yes,
there was a Gardevoir little mirror in the finals going on. So it's nice to see it having made its way over here to Europe. And now we can see the full teams jumping right into team preview. So Michele will be running that Tapu Fini, Landorus, Tapu Koko, Gardevoir, Incineroar, and Amoonguss combination, whereas Joan has gone for the Manectric, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, Celesteela, Gothitelle, and Snorlax, which again is a team that we saw over in a recent American regional.
Exactly, so both of those team cores are very established already. The Gardevoir not as much as that Manectric, Snorlax, Gothitelle kind of core, but for Gardevoir it makes so much sense to pair it up with that Incineroar now that Intimidate is released, and also Amoonguss. Like those three just go together very, very well as a Trick Room core. Can also be used like outside of Trick Room, of course, which is one of the strengths of having some of those Pokemon that can work inside and outside of Trick Room. And then on the other side, Juan's team with that Mega Manectric mode, trying to trap in with Gothitelle and Shadow Tag ability, and then you use Manectric's, Mega Manectric's ability Intimidate to reduce the physical damage, and then you can use Snarl against special type attackers, and then use Volt Switch and switches to get a position where some of your other Pokemon, most likely that's Snorlax, but sometimes also the Tapu Fini or even the Incineroar or the Celesteela, can really do the job, locking down your opponent and taking the game. So that is what Juan is going to attempt here, while Michele, on the other hand, will probably try to get his Mega Gardevoir in position to launch those Hyper Voices.
Exactly, like we're saying, if the Gothitelle traps in the opposing Pokemon, Mega Manectric with the Volt Switch and then potentially Incineroar with the U-turn can just keep switching around the ball positioning and keep intimidating the opposing Pokemon. And we do see on his side of the field it's going to be the Gothitelle and Tapu Fini lead opposing down the Amoonguss and Gardevoir core that we see so often on that Gardevoir team. So Misty Terrain going to go around the field, going to stop any potential spores coming out from this Amoonguss, and thanks to Gothitelle trapping it in there with Shadow Tag, it's not going to be able to switch out and potentially bring in, I mean, even if Michele wanted to bring in a Tapu of his own, he's got Tapu Fini and Tapu Koko. There can't be any spores.
Exactly, so just leading off with the Tapu Fini, already reducing that option, and then also using the Gothitelle right next to it, trapping in that Amoonguss. So yeah, no way for Michele to switch that Pokemon out. Tapu Fini already kind of did its job setting up the Misty Terrain, but with Celesteela, since it is a flying type, that really won't help him too much.
Exactly. Celesteela, however, will threaten that opposing Gardevoir that has hit its Mega Evolution button and will be joining the field here. Going to get the Pixelate ability, going for a Hyper Voice here, so obviously this is now going to be a Fairy type move thanks to that ability. Not going to do too much damage to Celesteela, does about a third to the opposing Gothitelle. That just goes for a Psychic. Going into that opposing Amoonguss, it's not going to appreciate taking this. Takes down to almost 50% HP as it goes for a Sludge Bomb into now the Steel type Celesteela. So great switch in there from Joan.
Yeah, nicely done by Joan, bringing in the Celesteela. Of course, it's not protected by the Misty Terrain. However, yeah, with Psychic and one more attack from the Celesteela, that Amoonguss could go down. And of course, since it cannot switch, also cannot really take advantage of the Regenerate ability. One thing that is interesting to notice is the fact that Celesteela did not have a Misty Seed, which is a very common item on those teams.
Exactly, the seeds, the Electric Seed, Misty Seed, has been really popular in this particular format, but it is packing something completely different. Going to be another Hyper Voice coming out from that Gardevoir, as Celesteela goes for a substitute. So going to be sort of mapping the little image we've got up there for Michele, and it's going to be a Trick Room coming out from the opposing Gothitelle.
Yeah, nicely done here by Joan once again. He brought out the Celesteela and now has his opponent like locked down because Amoonguss can't really touch it. It could have gone for a Spore, but of course Joan knew that okay, there's not going to go, like there won't be a Spore on the first turn, and now with Substitute, the Celesteela is like really well protected. The Gardevoir's Hyper Voice will actually bypass the Substitute since it is a sound-based move, so that also won't be able to really like
it
he
can't
won't be able
avoid
to
taking
break.
that.
Yeah, he won't be able to break the Substitute like that.
And of course the Rage Powder, they're going to direct that Heavy Slam that would have done super effective damage to the Gardevoir, protecting his partner Pokemon, goes into the Amoonguss, doesn't pick up the KO but does activate that Berry, so Amoonguss is actually better off for having Rage Powder that attack into its direction. Hyper Voice once again coming out from the Gardevoir, as you mentioned earlier, it's going to go into that Celesteela despite the Substitute, but we now do see what the item is on that Celesteela, and it's going to be one of those 50% berries, so an already incredibly bulky Pokemon with access to a move like Leech Seed, it now has a berry as well for all that health recovery.
Yeah, seeing how confidently Joan went for the Substitute right there, I think it was to be expected that there was the berry on the Celesteela, and but that Pokemon now is in such a strong position. Of course, with Heavy Slam doing so much damage, even to the Amoonguss, seeing that like maybe a combination of Psychic and Heavy Slam could be enough to get the knockout there. And then at the same time, the Gardevoir, of course, also always threatened by the Celesteela. So Michele, though, just going for some protects right there, has established the Trick Room right now and wants to like wait until the Misty Terrain is gone so that the Amoonguss can then maybe go for some Spores.
Of course, and the Gardevoir as well doesn't like to be in the Trick Room environment at the moment. I believe it was the slowest moving Pokemon on the field. Just going to try and stall it out with a little bit of a protect, and it's going to protect itself from potentially another Heavy Slam coming in from that Celesteela. Amoonguss goes for a Rage Powder, and I think this is going to be what you were sort of mentioning earlier, a double of Psychic and potentially Heavy Slam. It's going to pick up the KO and remove it from the field. Psychic going into the Amoonguss here, going to take it down to 34, and as we saw from the Heavy Slam damage previously, this will easily be enough to pick up the KO on Amoonguss. So although Michele will lose this sort of slow Pokemon in Trick Room, it does now give him the free switch to bring in something else, potentially like that Incineroar, to threaten something like a knockoff and Gothitelle or a Fire-type move onto Celesteela.
Yeah, also is a Beast Boost for that Celesteela, and if this Hyper Voice doesn't knock out the Gothitelle, which it does though, yeah, if that didn't knock out the Gothitelle, then the Gardevoir would have been trapped there for yet another turn, and the Celesteela could have attacked it with a Heavy Slam now that the redirection option is gone. So, yeah, very good for Michele that the Gothitelle went down, because now, of course, he can call back his Gardevoir if he wanted to. At the same time, though, Celesteela of Joan still with that Substitute intact, and yeah, that Celesteela is not that easy to take out for Michele, though a Pokemon like Tapu Koko, of course, really helps there.
Of course, and interesting enough, because of Trick Room, Tapu Koko is a slower Pokemon, which means that it will be able to get its electric terrain onto the field here, as opposed to Tapu Fini's misty terrain. So that's sort of an interesting quirk of Trick Room. You know, Tapu Koko doesn't like to be in this environment. You can potentially see it maybe going for something like a Protect at this moment to try and stall out some more of these turns. But even then, it could just be going very on the offensive here. It does heavily threaten both Celesteela and Tapu Fini, but I would more than expect potentially even a switch out from that Gardevoir, bring in maybe even the Incineroar, but definitely a Protect from the Tapu Koko, in my opinion.
Yes, Tapu Koko is definitely the Pokemon that Michele really needs. Again, looking at a Tapu Fini and a Celesteela, both weak to electric type attacks, so yeah, it would be foolish of him to leave it out there in the open. Joan switching in his Snorlax, probably a little too late to really make use of that Trick Room though.
Exactly, Snorlax joining the party a bit late for that Trick Room. Gardevoir will go for a Protect, as will the Tapu Koko, so Michele just wants to stall out these Trick Room turns and not allow Celesteela to pick up any KOs. Obviously, it will be threatening both of his Pokemon on the field at the moment. And now that Trick Room's over, Snorlax isn't looking too happy, but Tapu Koko is.
Tapu Koko certainly is. Still though, since his Mega Gardevoir couldn't really work on the Substitute, Michele's Tapu Koko still has to go through that if he wants to inflict some direct damage. And Snorlax being a very strong Pokemon like on the field right now for Joan, since yeah, through Gluttony and the berry that we would expect it to have, it's almost impossible for Michele to like, yeah, get the KO. And I really like the play here by Michele, switching out the Tapu Koko, because you could expect maybe like a Heavy Slam and return to go into that what was the Tapu Koko and is now the Incineroar that can take those attacks like way better.
Exactly, Incineroar's not going to mind taking a Heavy Slam, as you can see by the damage going off there. Obviously, Hyper Voice did manage to go through that Substitute once again, but high horsepower coming out from the Snorlax. Doesn't want to go for a setup, and that's a great move to have opted for it. If Tapu Koko stayed in, it's not going to have liked that at all, and Incineroar switching in as well, not going to appreciate it either.
Yeah, well done by Joan, and now we have all 4 Pokemon of both trainers revealed, I think. with that Snorlax and the Incineroar making an appearance for the first time here in the battle. So now the question is, will Michele just go for the knockoff here into the Snorlax to try and slow things down, or will he start working on that substitute of the Celesteela finally? Joan goes ahead and switches in his Tapu Fini, resetting the Misty Terrain, doesn't really do too much anymore, and wisely also protects the Celesteela he has. So he wants to get the Tapu Fini in, probably without taking too much damage, and threaten away the Incineroar.
Exactly, getting Tapu Fini in while Tapu Koko's off the field as well is really great, so you might be able to start setting up some Calm Minds or get some damage off as well. As you can see, not too much damage going off about here, and now that Tapu Fini's in, it's going to be interesting to see which move it goes for, but Celesteela, instead of that substitute, it still hasn't broken.
Yeah, and one of the problems that Michele is facing this game is the fact that his Gardevoir, while being on the field like almost the entire time and getting off attacks like here and there, due to the fact that the Celesteela and then all the other Pokemon like on Joan's team are so bulky, like all those moves that the Gardevoir has dished out, they're not really doing all too much. And hold that thought though, big turn coming up from Joan, who's now revealing the Voterium Z on his Tapu Fini, going for a Hydro Vortex in what I would assume is going to be the Incineroar.
I mean, this is an item choice in Tapu Fini. We've really seen rise in popularity lately. We barely even saw a 2017 format, and it's going straight into this opposing Incineroar. Particularly as Incineroar's been on the rise with Intimidate, it's really great to have something like a Hydro Vortex in the back to be able to just pick up the KO here. And as you can see, Incineroar will retreat right back to Michele there. Heavy Slam going to come out from the Celesteela, but thankfully Gardevoir protected from taking any damage that turn.
Yeah, and Joan really playing himself in a very nice position, switching in the Tapu Fini to threaten away the Incineroar. And even if Michele switched into his Tapu Koko, which is the last Pokemon that he had there, that would not have done anything for him either. So, I mean, while Tapu Koko now is forced to go to like make it back on the field and will reset its terrain, I think that the Celesteela is just too difficult for him to overcome. And yeah, just the fact that with that substitute, it's just like been on the field for the entire game, and at no point did Michele have a position where he had like say Incineroar and Tapu Koko on the field at the same time, where say he could have like broken the substitute and also like done damage at the same time. So Joan really getting that substitute up very nicely against the Amoonguss and the Gardevoir that he had trapped in with his Gothitelle and the Shadow Tag ability. So yeah, very nice plan, and really I want to compliment Joan for the way he played in this game. And looks like with the Celesteela now getting off that KO on the Gardevoir finally. Oh, actually not getting the KO.
5. That Gardevoir's packing a little bit of bulk, I see. But I think you're quite right there. The way that Joan has played this has been incredible, particularly with that Celesteela. He's really managed to keep it on the field, keep it in a really strong position where it can just not be threatened by something like this Tapu Koko. Yes, Gardevoir can hit through with Hyper Voice, but it's Fairy type. It's not going to be dealing that much damage at all. And thanks to the Berry, it really managed to regain health and is able to keep firing off these heavy slams that. So the Pokemon that Michele's brought, so he's had the Gardevoir, he's had the Tapu Koko, that doesn't want to take a heavy slam, and you know, even the Incineroar doesn't mind too much, but we did see it did a lot of damage to that opposing Amoonguss as well, so really impressed that Joan managed to.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think we've seen a Z move from Michele's side just yet, right?
No, I don't believe we have. We saw the Waterium Z, and I think you just pretty much called it there,
because,
Marcus.
Yeah, because like if that was able to knock out the Snorlax from here, which I think depending on like which move this is based on, or like how the Snorlax is EV'd, there might be a chance for this Gigabyte Havoc to take the KO there. And then if the Celesteela is targeting into the Gardevoir, then there might still be a chance for Michele to take the game after all.
Well, we'll have to see it. Gigabyte Havoc's such a powerful move, particularly boosted in that terrain.
Oh, wow.
But it just survived. Snorlax hanging in on there. Wanted to copy what Gardevoir did and just clutched onto his last remaining hit points. Heavy Slam's going to come out from the opposing Celesteela, going to take Tapu Koko down to 50% damage.
But what did Snorlax do though? Return
Goes for
into
a return,
the Tapu Koko.
doubles into Tapu Koko, and will be able to pick up the KO here. So what an offensive play there.
Wow, well done here by Joan once again. Though, on the other hand, you also have to keep in mind how well Michele was able to maneuver himself into a position where if that Azimov was able to get the knockout on the Snorlax, he would have won the game, presumably, since, like, even with Celesteela, like, sitting at such low HP, I think 2 Hyper Voices would have been enough to get the KO, potentially, and or I could have gone for, like, Thunderbolt and then broken the substitute and Psychic it, because, yeah, like, Celesteela's at such low HP, though with all the special defense boosts, I don't know, it could have been anyone's game still, but I think that, like,
that was incredible
Joan
survival.
Joan just prevented that entirely, that scenario from happening, by, just, like, reading what Michele was trying to do and winning this first game.
Exactly, and I absolutely love the way we saw a Snorlax as well come in at the very end of Trick Room, didn't set up, and that's not often something you see with Snorlax. Often the strategy is try to get it set up in Trick Room and it can just sweep from there. But instead, it came in here, took the Gigavolt Havoc, and managed to fire for a return and pick up the KO in return to the Tapu Koko. So, what an incredible game. It was really nice to see the ball position switches that went on here, but for me, it was that Celesteela. It did so well, just sat on the field and was able to apply a lot of pressure to Michele's team.
Yeah, that was actually the very first loss for Michele in this entire tournament, if we can trust the statistic that we just like saw on the screen for a split second here. So really well done here on Joan's part, just like getting that first win against Michele, who we haven't really talked about his accomplishments too much, but yeah, amongst other things, he has made it into the top 4, I believe, of the London International Championships in 2016.
Yep.
Also has proven to be a competitor to be like feared at the regional level, though. Yeah, I don't think he has won a regional yet, but yeah, so far at least he's certainly on track on making it far there.
He definitely is, and you know, he's Italian as well. We've spoken a lot about how
Yes.
this has been the year for the Italian player, so he's definitely jumped in on that and is making a name for himself in this 2018 format. But we saw both these players here pick their moves really, pick their Pokemon really quickly. They both know what they want to do going into this game too. Do you think there's going to be many adjustments?
I do think that Joan probably liked what he saw in the first game. However, he also, yeah, like probably cannot expect his opponent to go for the same strategy, because that substitute Celesteela was countering the Amoonguss and the Gardevoir lead from Michele like so well. And yeah, that just, it makes sense for me. Even though everything worked out so well for Joan, it makes sense to me that he's switching things up a little bit, and that he doesn't want to try and rely on the Gothitelle as much, probably, because like, yeah, a player of Michele's caliber is not going to run into the same trap the second time. So instead we're seeing a Tapu Koko and Amoonguss lead for Michele, which looks a little bit counterintuitive, because of course Amoonguss's main purpose is to spore things and put things to sleep, and Tapu Koko's electric train prevents that from happening. But at the same time, you can also be like, hey, well, your opponent has a Tapu Fini, like, Mist Drain is going to be set up anyway, so you can't rely on Spore, and Amoonguss has to use like Rage Powder and Sludge Bomb to do what it wants to do.
Exactly, we sort of touched on that earlier as well. Like, Michele is running both Tapu Koko and Tapu Fini with Amoonguss on his team, so potentially Spore is just a little sneaky trick he's got up his sleeve in case he comes down against Tapu Lele, for example. Gonna see some Protect straight away though here in game 2, gonna be from both the Alolan Guardians, Tapu Koko and Tapu Fini, and you know, Amoonguss wants to be part of that party as well. It goes for a Protect, as Incineroar goes for a Fake Out. Gonna go into that Tapu Koko slot, but thanks to all of these Protect, no damage this turn.
Yeah, so yeah, neither of them like wanted to really try anything fancier this turn. Like the Amoonguss probably could have done like a little bit of chip damage to the Incineroar
cool
with a Sludge Bomb, but at the same time, yeah, there wasn't really any opportunity for any damage. Though, like, both trainers could have used this first turn to like make some switches and adjust where they're standing right now. But it looks like Michele is probably happy having the Tapu Koko on the field against this Tapu Fini, since he knows that with the Z move he can probably get the KO here. So the Tapu Fini is kind of threatened away, and we're actually seeing the Manectric make an appearance here.
So this has Lightning Rod, so before it Mega Evolves, so if Tapu Koko has gone for an Electric type move, even if it's gone for its Z move, this is a really great switch in here from Joan. Intimidate is going to be fired off by the switch on Michele's side, going to bring his Incineroar to the field as well. And it is going to be the Z move, seeing as it's gone really, really fast. It's going to be the Gigavolt Havoc, so bringing in that Manectric, it's going to eat it right up.
Yeah, well done by Joan. He didn't lead the same Pokemon, but at the same time, for Michele, he probably had some decent reason to assume that, hey, maybe it's like Snorlax and Celesteela in the back, just like the last time, because both of those Pokemon did a decent job against Michele's team. However, this time, luring him into some false sense of security, switching in the Manectric with the Lightning Rod ability, just, yeah, absorbing the Z move, not only negating all the damage, but also getting a special attack boost in the process.
Exactly, great switch up there in the teams from Joan. You know, he didn't bring that game 1, but bringing it game 2 has really, really paid off for him here. Potentially, you know, it's a good Pokemon to be paired up with his Celesteela as well, if that's the Pokemon he's chosen to bring in this game 2, just so he can sort of have that good synergy, not Mega Evolve Manectric, and just stop that Tapu Koko from being a threat. But we're going to see more switches straight away. Once again, it's Incineroar jumping in and out of the field. Going to retreat back to Michele, and he's going to bring that Gardevoir onto the field. it's going to actually trace the Lightning Rod, so something Michele doesn't want at all. Very likely going to be Mega Evolving his Gardevoir as soon as he can, as Tapu Koko just goes for another Protect, as will the Manectric, so both Electric type Pokemon here going on the defensive, and we're just going to have to see now what the Incineroar goes for. It's another Flare Blitz, but that Protect will stop Tapu Koko from being KO'd this turn.
Yeah, that could have been pretty funny with the trace if Michele like expected his opponent's Manectric to Mega Evolve or switch out and was going for like Volt Switch or something. Or it could have been like kind of good if he wants to like boost his Gardevoir's damage output. Yeah, some fun stuff can still happen with Trace. Yeah, we haven't seen like a lot of Trace going on in this year's format, but now that with Incineroar being released, Mega Gardevoir, like being more popular nowadays, so there might be some more fun scenarios coming up in the future.
Exactly, you can trace Intimidate and add another one of those Intimidate Pokemon to the field. As we see Incineroar jump right back in again. Manectric is going to leave the field though, however, and Tapu Fini will rejoin once again. So a good switch in here, seeing as Michele's Incineroar has joined the field. But, you know, lots of switches. There's going to be 3 in this one turn. Celesteela is going to come in for the opposing Incineroar. Going to be partnered up with that Tapu Fini facing down Incineroar and Gardevoir on Michele's side. And like I said earlier, I think he's going to want to Mega Evolve this Gardevoir as soon as possible, and that's exactly what we see it going for.
Yep.
Probably going to be going for another Hyper Voice, I would have assumed, and it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, so now both trainers have revealed all 4 of their Pokemon and know what they're dealing with in this match here. Looks like that Hyper Voice once again doing some decent amount of damage to the Tapu Fini, but Gardevoir is not a Pokemon that that really takes those one-hit KOs, for example. Like, it's more of a Pokemon that adds up like over time, and like adds up the damage over time, and that's what we're seeing right here.
Exactly, and more switches once again. This Incineroar just doesn't know whether to stay on the field or jump off the field. It's going to switch out, and Amoonguss will join in as Gardevoir goes for a Protect on this particular turn. Tapu Fini goes for a Protect as well. So both these players really being strategic with their ball positioning and protects, don't want to take any unnecessary damage, and want to make sure they're in the best ball positioning going forward into the next turn. So
Misty Terrain is actually now gone, and Tapu Fini is on the field. So right now this might be the prime opportunity for that Amoonguss to go for some Spores here, and I'm not sure if Michele like has planned this or if it just happened to be convenient, but either way, yeah, Joan has to come up with a different way of dealing with that Amoonguss now. Of course, for Celesteela, we have already seen that Substitute is an option that it has available to it, but for the other slot, there might be like an easy Spore target for Michele.
Tapu Fini going to leave the field as the Incineroar on Joan's side is going to come back in. Obviously Intimidating not going to be bothered here, but it's going to be threatening Fire type moves onto the opposing Amoonguss. Another Hyper Voice that comes out from the Gardevoir, going to do some good damage on the opposing Incineroar, but once again Celesteela is not going to mind that at all and goes for a Substitute. So this was the move that we really saw Joan utilize in game 1. But, you know, Amoonguss, it's finally been able to get off a Spore now that Misty Terrain has gone. It's going to put that Incineroar right to sleep.
I think I would have preferred seeing a Heavy Slam coming out from that Celesteela. Of course, there was the option of Rage Powder to come up from Amoonguss from Michele, but even if Rage Powder came out, that would mean that there wasn't any Spore, so that the next turn Joan could have still like swapped in his Tapu Fini to prevent any more Spores from going off, and that could have been an opportunity for Joan to get off a lot of damage. Like we've seen in the first game that Heavy Slam not necessarily is going to be enough to get the KO on the Gardevoir, but now Incineroar has to take a guaranteed turn of sleep, and Michele doesn't have to worry about it at all. It just goes for another Rage Powder and another Hyper Voice.
Exactly. I mean, the one benefit of taking the substitute damage previously is that the Hyper Voice damage there was enough to proc the Berry on Celesteela, so it's able to gain a lot more health back at the end of this turn. But like you said, Incineroar here, it's just going to be sleeping and not doing any damage, but will be taking these powerful Hyper Voices.
Yeah, and we've seen Leech Seed coming out from the Celesteela. No Heavy Slam whatsoever, probably expecting a switch here, which we're seeing right now, because of course now that Incineroar of Joan could wake up, and yeah, Michele doesn't want to be hit by a Flare Blitz here. So it'll be interesting seeing what the Gardevoir goes for. Yep, just for a Protect, doesn't want to risk being hit by Heavy Slam either, so there's probably no damage like really being dealt this turn.
Of course, and this Incineroar kind of getting away lightly from being asleep. It's allowing it to clock up its sleep turns without actually taking any damage thanks to all the Protects and Switch that Michele is doing, but it could all be just a ruse to kind of get himself in a better position going forward. Obviously now that he does have his own Incineroar on the field, he can threaten some Fire type damage onto the opposing Celesteela, try and break that substitute, because if you're not able to do it, the only way that Michele can really touch that Celesteela is with these Hyper Voices, and as we saw in game 1, they really do not cut the mustard with it. They're just not doing enough. It is enough though to pick up the KO on the opposing Incineroar, so that Pokemon is going to return right back to its trainer as Incineroar goes for a Flare Blitz, so this will no doubt pick up the substitute removal on the opposing Celesteela, but you know, if it's going for something like a Heavy Slam, that's going to do some good damage to the opposing Gardevoir, but you never know, we could see it just going for a Leech Seed, But no, going on the offensive, just like you wanted to see Marcus, I'm going to go straight into that Gardevoir.
Yeah, now let's see.
Oh.
This time it is enough for the
With a
knockout
crit.
with a critical hit. Wow. Yeah, that can definitely
He was just
really,
biding his time.
Yeah, that can really change things up here. He gets one of those special defense beast boosts that we've also seen in the first game, but now with Gardevoir being removed, I don't think it's like super important for Michele, but at the same time, Gardevoir isn't like, it never feels like it's that important, you know, because you're just like launching some hyper voices and you're never going to get those like big knockout. But now with Celesteela being able to get that KO here, yeah, Michele is forced to switch in Amoonguss here, and it's like things are just like not as easy for him now. Though at the same time, Amoonguss with Sludge Bomb could cover for a potential Tapu Fini switch in.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I do think that there's still like definitely some options here for both players.
Exactly. Amoonguss can be going for a Spore, you know, as long as the terrain doesn't change. Potentially sort of put that Celesteela to sleep, even if Tapu Fini does want to switch in, because Celesteela's a flying type, it's still going to be affected by that. But I think getting Tapu Fini on the field would be good.
I think you want to double protect this turn, and then next turn Volt Switch and switch. Okay.
Oh no,
we're seeing
straight for the Volt Switch.
Different though. No Mega Evolution coming out, is saving that for later on, and also wants to maintain, like, keep Lightning Rod for the Tapu Koko around, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that Michele does have the Tapu Koko in the back. He wants to keep that preserved, and potentially he did want to get the Misty terrain onto the field, protecting the Celesteela from any potential spores, but it will also now be protecting all the Pokemon on the ground. Flare Blitz coming out once again from that Incineroar, and it's going to be the Sludge Bomb, just like you mentioned earlier, going to predict that Tapu Fini coming in. Not enough to pick up the KO, though, unfortunately, for Michele.
Yeah, if he switched out Celesteela, and then, like, he could have Volt Switched and brought out Celesteela in the other slot again to take out that Sludge Bomb. But at the same time, like, it's always, like, kind of risky to go for plays like that where you only have like one Pokemon in the back, and like it's just like so obvious in some scenarios. So Michele though going for the Sludge from calling the protect and Volt Switch correctly, and inflicting a lot of damage to that Tapu Fini.
Of course, now it's just a way of trying to whittle down this Amoonguss as well. Celesteela, we did see did some good damage with the Heavy Slam, but Tapu Fini doesn't really have many powers to pack that it can really pick up a KO. But it does have Hydro Vortex. Obviously, this is resisted by the Amoonguss, but Rage Powder is going to ensure it goes into it. Yeah,
Muddy Water would have also been able to hit that Incineroar through the Rage Powder, so that could have been another option. But it looks like Joan wasn't really expecting the Rage Powder to come out. Maybe expected a Switch or a Protect instead. Though at the same time, Amoonguss is not really doing all too much. So going for Rage Powder just to absorb some hits here is really what Michele can use.
I mean, the Rage Powder really paying off here because that Incineroar was protected by the Hydro Vortex, is now allowed to get a Flare Blitz off, and that is going to pick up the KO against that opposing Celesteela. So Joan no longer has that sort of bulky Pokemon that can just sit on the field, regain health, and pick up KOs. He's now going to have to be forced to bring back in that Manectric. You know, potentially this could be the turn to Mega Evolve it and get the Intimidate off.
Yeah, if he had used Mother Water the previous turn, there would have been a scenario where he potentially could have gotten a double knockout with Overheat, if that is the fire type move of choice on the Manectric, and Muddy Water. And then, yeah, it's still not clear whether Joan would have been able to knock out the Tapu Koko, because Dazzling Gleam, even like through Lightning Rod, would have been enough to probably like win the 1v1 encounter against the Manectric with then hypothetically -2 special attack stat. So I think in the end Michele like kind of just managed the end game just a little bit better, and Manectric, while it did a very good job of taking that Lightning Rod, or taking that Gigavolt Havoc with Lightning Rod, is just not as bulky as the other Pokemon that Joan used in the previous game, and so it feels like, well, like Manectric didn't really do anything, and he was kind of like missing the beef that his Snorlax or the Gothitelle could provide in the first game. And so, against a team like Michele's, where with Gardevoir just like launching Hyper Voices, and then there's just a couple of attacks, like no big damage, but continuously like small damage, like Sludge Bomb and so on. It feels like a Pokemon like Snorlax could be like really beneficial to Joan's game plan of trying to outlast that sort of team.
Exactly. Michele's just using moves like you're saying, Hyper Voice and Sludge Bomb. That's just going to whittle away at your opponents, not be any sort of big dominant KOs. I mean, he tried with the Gigavolt Havoc, but that was the one thing Manectric could really come in and sort of take away from Michele. Something like Snorlax that's so bulky has options for recovery. With Recycle, Bury, and Gluttony, it's a Pokemon that you really need to be able to hit hard. Whittling away will not be enough, unfortunately. Manectric still not Mega Evolving, goes for a Volt Switch.
Ooh, it's Hydro Pump actually.
Yeah, and it
Oh,
actually
wow.
avoided. So Incineroar is able to get off a Flare Blitz this turn, going into that Tapu Fini. But I mean, if that Hydro Pump had connected, that could have been a very, very different turn there.
So no Muddy Water, but Hydro Pump. That is what the Z move is based on. Okay, so that actually could have been enough to knock out the Incineroar. I mean, it definitely would have been enough to knock out the Incineroar.
Power over accuracy.
And then, well, with Amoonguss, I think, yeah, it's like still not clear who would win there, but with Electric Terrain just being reset, Amoonguss would not have been able to use Spore. And yeah, we don't know what move the Manectric carries in terms of like coverage for fire type attacks, but I definitely think that there could have been a chance for Joan to still win the game if that Hydro Pump had connected.
Exactly, that could have been such a game-changing turn. Manectric is going to Mega Evolve this turn, wants to get rid of Lightning Rod and bring the Intimidate, but I feel like Michele does have the 3 Pokemon remaining that he needs to be able to pick up this game. Volt Switch coming out with a critical hit, sort of a little bit of payback there from the previous Avoid, as Tapu Koko goes for a Dazzling Gleam. Single target, this is going to do more damage than it would have previously done. Doesn't take it down to 50% though.
Yeah, so Manectric of course still hanging in there, but another round, like just Rage Powder and another round of Dazzling Gleams will be enough for Michele to take home the game. So of course, would have been nice to see what would have happened if that Hydro Pump connected on the Incineroar. However, I still think that Amoonguss was just too healthy after another round of Regenerator, and yeah, Tapu Fini and Manectric probably would not have been able to take it out. So I think in the end, Michele like still had kind of had the better idea of how to approach this game, and yeah, should probably or is probably going to win it now.
Yeah, I mean, going for the double protect there, he was scouting out, I think, whether Manectric was packing something like Overheat, and he did reveal that. So if he does go for something like the Follow Me Dazzling Gleam, depending on the sort of damage roll that he gets, be interesting to see how much damage Overheat will do.
He would need 2 critical hits now because this is not going to KO.
Oh, well, I think he got the 1 critical hit.
Okay.
Commentator's curse there, Marcus.
Okay.
So, you know, this Tapu Koko can go for a Dazzling Gleam, and if it doesn't get the roll that it wants, potentially this really speedy Manectric would be able to turn this around.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and it is living!
Does survive.
So this game has just completely changed around.
Ooh, okay,
wow.
I mean, the Manectric is now at 2 reduced stages of special attack, and I don't think that Overheat would be enough to get the KO without a critical hit, but let's find out.
We'll have to see. He's already got 1. He might need the other one. How?
Okay.
Not enough, unfortunately. Takes it down to 15 HP, and Tapu Koko is able to go for a Dazzling Gleam.
Wow, okay, so in the end, yeah, that definitely got a little more intense or a little more exciting than we thought it would be after that Hydro Pump miss. But Michele wins the second game, which also means that we will have a game 3 at our hands.
Always really exciting, particularly when you're getting later and later into this tournament where your losses really, really will count, because you're already sort of undefeated, but if you sort of fall at the final hurdle, you might miss that illustrious top cup.
Exactly, and both of these players have really delivered a great show so far.
Yeah, it's been very exciting.
2 pretty analytical and technical games where it wasn't like about big fireworks and like crazy predictions or something, but more about like slowly and steadily whittling down your opponent, as you would like to describe it. And so yeah, I really like seeing matchups like this, because that truly shows like, hey, who has their end game figured out, who has all the plans at their hands for these matchups. And I think that Manectric was a nice option that Joan used in the second game. Really threw his opponent off, switched it into the Z move, but it still wasn't enough for him. So I think that for the third game, I would probably want him to not use the Manectric and focus a little bit more about his bulky Pokemon, like the Tapu Fini, Incineroar, bring the Snorlax, and then also the Celesteela if he does not want to go with the Gothitelle mode again. I think I would probably bring those 4 Pokemon, but by doing that, you also really limit your options in terms of like just using like slow Pokemon. Makes it so that your opponent will always have like the upper hand in terms of speed control. So yeah, there's a couple of arguments for both sides. But Michele, though, going back to what we did in the first game, and we're seeing the same leads coming out from Joan as well. So throwback to the first game, and we all know how that ended.
Exactly. I mean, the Amoonguss Goldenrod combination's been so popular, but nice to see that Gothitelle come back once again. So it's kind of strong from these leads that potentially Joan's going to be going for something along the lines of trapping in the Pokemon, whittling them down, potentially seeing another substitute Celesteela. But interestingly enough as well, that Gardevoir did, you know, get Trace. If it wanted to, it could trap in that Tapu Fini, but I do feel like it's just going to Mega Evolve, start spamming out some Hyper Voices.
Yeah, with Shadow Tag, that also means though that it can actually switch out against the opposing Shadow Tag.
And that's very true. If it wants to just switch out, it can do. But no, instead wants to hit that Mega Evolution button, get the Pixelate ability, and just start firing off some fairy type moves. Potentially, you know, if something like Incineroar wants to come in, as it likes to keep jumping in and out of all these games, it won't want to take that. But Hyper Voice is going to come out, do some good damage to both these Pokemon, and Tapu Fini going straight onto the offensive. How we were just talking, this game's all about sort of ball positioning and the little sneaky attacks here and there. But no, Tapu Fini, Game 3, wants to completely change it up and use that Hydro Vortex coming off of Hydro Pump.
Yeah, so in the previous game, I think he swapped out and maybe switched into, in the first game, he switched into Celesteela. So, yeah, maybe he was expecting that his opponent is not going for another Sludge Bomb into that slot, and instead probably wants to try and Sludge Bomb the Gothitelle or do something completely different. But we're actually seeing the Spore, and what a nice play there by Joan, like just staying in, being protected by the Misty Terrain. Of course, it's very, very nice. But going for the Spore on the Gothitelle, actually, so he was probably expecting his opponent to switch the Gothitelle into the Celesteela. However, I don't really think that there is too much that the Gothitelle needs to be afraid of, and yeah, a little bit of a curious play there by Michele, trying to call a switch here into the Celesteela, but that was like a very advanced read, I would want to say.
Yeah.
Instead, though, the other option would have been to just go for a Sludge Bomb into the Tapu Fini. That would have done a little bit more chip damage. But maybe Michele was thinking like, hey, okay, even if I like land the Sludge Bomb, it's not going to like really change the outcome of the game. However, if I was able to hit the Celesteela on the switching with the Spore, then that could certainly change the outcome of the game.
Of course, well, Joan's Tapu Fini is really targeting down this Gardevoir. Went for the Z move on it previously, going for another Moonblast. Just doesn't want us to be firing off these powerful attacks, but the Gothitelle going for Trick Room now.
Yeah, and Gardevoir taking that attack.
Yeah, it managed to survive, so Michele doesn't get a switch in here for maybe a slower Pokemon that would want to use Trick Room more beneficially. He's going to be trapped in with that Gardevoir facing down Gothitelle and Tapu Fini, but, you know, Amoonguss, very slow Pokemon, it's going to enjoy this environment just as much as the next slow Pokemon. And speaking of those kind of slightly slower Pokemon, I've said that many times now, it's going to be the Snorlax coming in, so I'm sure you're delighted to see that Pokemon back on the field. Easily going to take that Sludge Bomb, and it's going to be the Psychic coming out from Gothitelle just to pick up the KO on Gardevoir.
Yeah, the fact that the Gardevoir was able to take that attack really doesn't help Michele too much at all, because while it means that Gothitelle has to invest another move in targeting down the Gardevoir, it also means that Michele couldn't use that turn to like threaten a potential Snorlax switch in with his Incineroar that is now on the field, and that he probably would have switched in before because his Amoonguss was looking to get the KO on the Tapu Fini of his opponent. So now Snorlax is already on the field, didn't have to worry about like a potential knockoff coming into its slot earlier, and also the Gothitelle didn't really have to worry about an attack coming in from the Incineroar. So that, yeah, taking that move on the Gardevoir might have actually hurt Michele a little bit. However, now he does have the Incineroar on the field, which is a Pokemon that matches up quite nicely against both Gothitelle and Snorlax. Let's see, he is able to land the Fake Out correctly here, and if he doubled up with the Sludge Bomb, which he did,
that's what he's gone for. Just chip away at the Snorlax a little bit more.
And that is that kind of was his best option, you know, like even though it doesn't do a lot of damage, stalling out another turn of Misty Terrain before he can finally go for those Spores.
Exactly, and with Incineroar as well, you mentioned earlier, obviously, knockoff. That's a move that if Snorlax is packing the berry that we pretty much always see it doing, there's occasionally a cheeky little choice band in there, but if you're knocking off that berry, you're going to stop Snorlax from getting any health sort of regenerated with Cycle and things like that. Of course, the Gothitelle doesn't want to take a knockoff either, you can easily see that swap, but it's Ally Switch, the move that sort of have daunted people in 2018, going to switch a route on the field there.
And the Belly Drum.
And Belly Drum, so Snorlax going to boost up its attack as well as switching places. Now, I wonder if Michele has seen this coming. It's a move that everyone sort of loves to hate, but sometimes it can just be what you need to clinch out a game, and the fact that he's managed to hide that information until Game 3 could really be in his favour. Sludge Bomb's going to come out though, connect onto that Snorlax, and low kick.
Oh wow, what a read!
That's incredible!
What a play! Wow, and I was going to say like, oh, actually in this particular situation, yeah, if like he's just going for a knockoff and Sludge Bomb into the Gothitelle slot.
No.
Heal Pulse actually would have been better because yeah, the Snorlax while using Belly Drum consumes the berry anyway, so it doesn't get knocked off and doesn't take any extra damage. But Michele just really going out there with a read, going for the double up with like, you need to target that Gothitelle with low kick and Sludge. Just think about that, how much courage that takes, because Gothitelle was going to survive that combination. It would have activated its berry even.
Got more health back.
Yeah, you would have done a lot of damage to yourself by going for that play if it didn't work out the way it did. But Michele really maybe having an idea of how these teams, of like how Joan's team functions, is capable of making a move like that. Wow.
I mean, we're just recovering from that turn, but Amoonguss is still going here, goes for a Spore, going to throw that onto the Celesteela that's just come into play, as Gothitelle goes for a Psychic, going to throw this out onto the Amoonguss. Oh, not enough to pick up the KO though, but will get the berry. So again, Amoongu's going to probably appreciate taking that psychic as well, and it's free to sport again, as there is still no Misty Terrain on the field.
Yep.
If it so wanted to go for that. And this Incineroar goes for a Flare Blitz. Probably going into that sleeping Celesteela here, just wants to take off the field, but no, actually goes into the Gothitelle, removes it, and obviously, I mean, Celesteela's sleeping now, he can Flare Blitz that another day, can't he?
Exactly, so yeah, just making sure that now the next turn he can go for like a Rage Powder and a Flare Blitz into the Celesteela, and really just that turn, like, Joan did everything perfectly. He set up the Snorlax, got it into a nice position, and then, unfortunately for him, Michele was just like one level above him in terms of that turn, going for the double up into the Gothitelle as it ally switched away. Very nicely done by Michele, and now, yeah, as we were saying, the Z move has already been used. We've seen that Hydro Pump is the move that Tapu Fini carries, so Rage Powder can, yeah, draw that attention away to the Amoonguss. Hydro Pump would have like not done any damage at all, and so yeah, Joan knows it, Michele knows it, and Joan is going to forfeit this game, meaning that Michele is going to win this encounter 2-1. There we have his match record, 9 wins. There probably should be 10, seeing as he is 5-0, but maybe like it was a disconnection or something. But yeah, just one loss, and still though undefeated in sets, 5-0, looking to advance to the top 8. That will take place tomorrow, but of course there's still 2 more rounds left, and Michele,
anything can happen.
yeah, really, really well done.
I mean, I want to talk about that ally switch. It's one of those moves that we've seen a lot in this format. As a player, you probably hate to face it. It's that horrible mind game. Are they going to do it? Are they not? And it can really make or break a game. But from a commentator perspective, it's incredibly exciting to watch.
Yes.
Because you are then genuinely asking, have they gone for it? Have they called it correctly? And when they do, it can be some of the most incredible moments to capture on stream. And I'm sure Michele will love to be able to watch that back, sort of as a little key moment, a highlight from Stuttgart, regardless of the rest of the result.
Yeah, that is true. Like, ally switch, one of those moves where if you have no knowledge about it, it really favors the user, because like, hey, like at what point did Michele know, like, oh, like he probably has ally switch? Maybe he was like kind of keeping tabs on which moves the Gothitelle could have used in certain situations, like what he could have done if he had it, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe in this situation, if he had Heal Pulse, he probably would have used it. He didn't use it, so okay, it doesn't have Heal Pulse. Or oh, he could have taunted my Amoonguss if he had taunt, but oh, I didn't do it.
Maybe he doesn't have it.
So, and in the end, he probably just ruled out that ally switch was the most likely, that is based on the way that his opponent was playing. But that is like taking a guess like that, and then also like committing to a play like that, like with Sludge from a low kick, like there was no second option for him. Like if that Gothitelle didn't go for ally switch, then he was probably going to lose the game.
Exactly, you have to fully commit to it.
Exactly.
There's no going back on it.
On the other hand, though, in like, what are you going to do in Joan's shoes? Like, he hasn't revealed the move yet. You know, like you're like waiting for this one opportunity to click the button and then just like win the game just off with that,
sort of a hype reveal at the end of the game, game 3.
Yes, so I think for Joan's perspective it makes a lot of sense to use it there, because he didn't have any reason to believe that his opponent was going to call that. So, like, for Michele, if he made the assumption that his opponent had ally switch, he also like could make the assumption that, oh, like he's going to use it.
He might know.
He will absolutely use it this turn, because that is the one opportunity he has. He hasn't shown it yet. Like, there was no reason for Joan to expect that, but Michele being like on another level there a little bit, really keeping his composure, keeping cool after losing the first game, really showing off what a talented player he is.
Exactly, and you never know, we might be able to showcase him more later on in the tournament, particularly in top 8, if he does manage to keep that winning streak alive. Unfortunately, we're unable to grab him for an interview, so do enjoy the extra couple of minutes to go get a cup of tea, refresh, and then join us back here for the next round, which will be very soon.